Welcome one and all to another edition of the Devo Show with Luby here on the 5 Reasons Sports Network, brought to you by Water Cleanup of Florida. The weather's cooled off a bit, which is fantastic. That doesn't mean your homes are safe from fire or water issues. Well, they sort of are if you work with, deal with, and understand the greatness of Water Cleanup of Florida. Just call them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 954-579-0356. Water Cleanup of Florida. We're there for my wife and I in our time of need, and they'll be there for you. Issues around the home or office always stress me out. They made it so simple that they took the stress right away. 954-579-0356 for Water Cleanup of Florida. With over 60 years of combined experience with licensed, certified, insured contractors, Michael, Robert, George, and their entire team will take care of you and not only fix what issues ail you, but they'll make them look brand new. Be sure to check them out on Google with well over 85-star reviews. Check them out on their website, wcufl.com, or on the socials at Water Cleanup FL. Water Cleanup of Florida. If you have the schmutz, they have the guts. Well, it had been schmutzy in the South Florida sports scene for nearly 2 decades. The Miami Heat were the shining light in all the darkness until this last year when it felt like we've been bathed in sunlight down here in South Florida. A man who's covered South Florida sports for over 3 decades. We enjoy talking to him, and he somehow enjoys talking to us. The one and only Dave Hyde joins us to talk all things South Florida sports here on the Devo Show with the Luby on the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
Jump to force. We got Michael Luby Lubitz here, the Devo Show on a Wednesday morning. Later on, Old School with Tony Soprano. But right now, we want to go present and accounted for, and we're glad to make the connection with the preeminent columnist anywhere in South Florida, one of the best anywhere ever to be a scribe and be an ink-stained wretch in the press box and be able to pontificate about the world of sports. The great Dave Hyde of the South Florida Sun-Sentinel joins us here on the program. David, how are you, my friend?
I'm very well, Defo. All teams winning. All good news. Nothing like good news in my world. Beautiful.
Yes, you turned us on to that concept, and actually, it was an epiphany for us because we always thought losing was what sold. But you were absolutely right. It's much better to have winners in the fold and in a particular city, and we've had a lot of winning. But some things, I mean, the more things change, the more they remain the same. This mystery, and I know Luby got in touch with you because. He was bowled over when he read the news a couple of days ago, about 9 in the morning it broke, that Kim Ng was parting ways with the Miami Marlins. Now, you would have thought if they wanted to keep anybody, and never mind Soler or Rise, that they would have wanted to keep this woman around and give her maybe more authority, more autonomy to see what she could possibly do. And it looked like that was anything but the case, that the issue seemed to be a roadblock that Bruce Sherman was going to put in her way so that she didn't have full decision-making power over personnel. What did you make of that? I mean, is that just another sorry, episode in what has been a completely sorry state of affairs for what seems like 3 decades with the Miami Marlins?
Well, it sure plays that way nationally. I get it. I get the view. The optics aren't great. They just made the playoffs. She made some nice moves.
Yeah.
Trades at the deadline. She got a couple, assembled the bullpen at the start of the season, et cetera. So, and here they make the playoffs for the first time in 20 years. It's a full season, full season
Yes.
playoffs. They made them in the COVID year, but, and yet, so you can look at it that way, and what are the They're clowns, right? Or you can look
Yes.
at it this way, which is the way I'm leaning more towards, which is, what's their way out of this? Okay, last year was a great year for them. Just hats off, fantastic. They made the playoffs when nobody expected them to. But let's break it down here and see if this is sustainable baseball. They're last in the league in runs scored. They're second to last in defense. They're 8th out of 15 in pitching. They're 22nd in payroll. They have nobody coming up from the minors. MLB.com, their top 100 prospects, the Marlins have one at number 55, a pitcher.
Wow.
And this team needs hitting. So if you're Bruce Sherman, you say, is this sustainable? What's the way out here? The way out is the only way that every owner of the Marlins has said, and nobody wants to say because everybody says, well, they got to spend more money, these cheapskates. Well, okay, after 5 owners, maybe we say maybe they aren't all cheapskates. This is legitimately the only way out. They got to get minor league talent. So if you're Bruce Sherman, you say, why aren't we drafting or developing any players? Derek Jeter was a disaster. I mean, he's got one player drafted on the major league roster, and that's Nick Fuentes, the co-catcher, the guy hitting 6 home runs and sharing.
And right around the Mendoza line, yeah. He had some key hits, though. He wasn't terrible.
Yeah, look, he's on the roster. Everybody had key hits this year. It was a great year. But moving forward, you say, wow, we need some everyday players, and our minor leagues have none. And we need some guys coming up. The one prospect they have is, according to MLB.com, slated to make the majors in 2026.
Yeah.
So
right around the corner, Dave.
So you look at it, if you're Bruce Sherman, you say, okay, why hasn't Kim Ng drafted anybody? Was it just Jeter? Why aren't they developing? So he wants to bring in a head of baseball operations, which is what a lot of teams do, put them above the GM. And evidently that
was the issue.
Was a sticking point here. Yeah.
Wow. So there is justification for it, Dave Hyde. That's why we love having you on the program.
But Dave, would you have gotten rid? Because I understand the drafting issues, but from what we know, she only had 1 year of real autonomy to make player movement. How much drafts can you do with that? Like, to me, and I was as big a detractor of Kim Ng as anyone, she earned a little, to me, cachet this year. Like, what she could control, she did. And more often than not, she hit on her moves. Even Soler, that seemed like a bust, worked out this year. Like, don't you find, you're not wrong. They do need to draft better, obviously. It's a fucking joke the way they've drafted. But is that on Ng? Like, don't you, massage it in a way where, fine, we do need to bring better people, but can't you have that also work with her in that? Like, the way it was presented to us was they tried to thrust on a boss without really her knowledge after she had this great year, something that a lot of other organizations would not have done to someone who had such a great year.
Yeah, well, this was in the whispers since I was out there spring training, and someone mentioned Kim Ng's in the last year of her contract, and this is sort of I don't want to say tryout year because it's not a try. It's a
make or break. Yeah.
You know, make or break, and she had a great year. So I get if people are saying, "What's going on here?" You know, how could you fire her after this year when she made so many great moves and the Marlins made the playoffs but I get what Bruce Sherman's saying, which is, what's our way out here and what's her strength? Her strength isn't evidently. She's an administrative GM, okay? She gathers information from baseball people and makes decisions. I'm guessing, and I'm not saying, boy, Bruce Sherman's got it all figured out here, because his next move is the big one. It's easy to say, okay, let's get rid of this person, but who does he got coming in here? And can this person, for once, run drafts and build an organization and all that? Because really, that's what they need. They can't. You know, they're 22nd in payroll this year, which is, that's pretty good when you compare to where they've been in the last 20 years. Yeah. So it's probably not going to go up any higher than that. You can't imagine that the Marlins, given everything in baseball and the way it's run, are going to go up higher than that. So they got to get some young talent, and they got none in the pipeline right now.
Yeah, makes some sense, Dave Hyde. I mean, it's certainly a different way of looking at it, because we just expressed the usual, and we borrow this from the great Tony Bruno, outrage that, here we finally had something good going. I mean, it might be more painful, though. We don't know how this works. We don't know the psychology of Bruce Sherman, but maybe he feels it's more painful writing those checks to Avisail Garcia than the Mets feel about paying Bobby Bonilla to 3,030. And that just, he couldn't get over that. It didn't matter that they made the postseason. No.
Yeah, and look, you go into free agency, you hit 50%, right? That's how it usually is in any sport. some good, some bad. And if you're the Yankees, if you're the Dodgers, you just write those bad ones off. If you're the Marlins, you stick Garcia
Yeah.
out in the outfield every night, saying, "Please get a hit tonight,"
Good.
and because that's how you have to live.
Well, yeah, and he probably was watching some, highlights of Johnny Cueto starts, during during the decision making process there. All right, so that one's gone, and we don't know how it's going to work out. It's possible that they get an answer to what you would have to think what was a must have for them, and that is a developmental system where they can improve from within, since they're not going to be out there for the high premium free agents that are on the market. All right, the Miami Dolphins find themselves in an interesting position here, Dave Hyde, and we had that clip before about it's great. It seems like maybe they figured things out. Where do you stand in terms of their relationship to now the other elite teams that are all 5-1? San Francisco falling on its face against the Cleveland Browns and a backup quarterback. You had the Eagles going down to the Jets, who supposedly, they're finished for the season, or had been since Aaron Rodgers' injury. And now they won a couple in a row. They have a good defense, but still, you would think no excuse for Philadelphia falling in that spot. And the Lions, who I guess had an early loss and have been winning ever since in convincing fashion with our favorite coach in the NFL, Dan Campbell. So, of those teams that are 5-1, what do you make of the Dolphins? Are they truly elite at this stage of the season?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, to beat the Dolphins, you're going to have to score points. Look, you can go every week isn't a conclusion, even though we all overreact, including me, on San Francisco isn't as good as they should be because they missed a field goal at the end against Cleveland, or the Eagles really aren't as good as everybody thought because Jalen Hurts threw a dumb interception at the end. So look, all this is, you sweep 6 games together, and now it'll be 7 games, and at the midseason you look back, okay, where is everybody? 1 week shouldn't be the deciding point. But you look at the Dolphins' schedule, and they played, 5 of the teams they played are in the bottom third of defense in the league.
Yes.
Okay. One's been good in Buffalo. So is that a question? Yeah, of course it's a question without a conclusion just yet. But they play Philadelphia next. They play Kansas City in a couple of weeks, and there's 2 really good teams. 2 Super Bowl teams last year, and they could easily get back to the Super Bowl this year. So you have more evidence of where the Dolphins are, but I'm on board. I'm seeing things go on offensively, not just points scored, but the way they're doing it, that are, having me go into the calculator to figure out numbers all the time. And so, and I think their defense will come around. Vic Fangio's just proven he's done it everywhere. So I think at some point it'll happen here, especially if Jalen Ramsey's coming back earlier than expected. So yeah, I put the Dolphins right there with everybody. All the top 5-6 teams that can win it all.
Well, what's interesting, and it was just announced that Jalen Ramsey's practicing today. So he's actually there's a 3-week window where that's where he would come back. So that would put him at the beginning of November, which is a light years ahead of where he was supposed to be. Yeah. And as off as the defense has looked, it's been just good enough that it's sort of stemmed the tide, which a lot of us were worried about, especially with Howard now pulling up with another injury, and Nick Needham, who was supposed to be a big part of that rotation, has been hurt pretty much the entire year. So that's great news. And look, the other thing that's interesting to me is, before I would get to any negatives, is even versus the bad teams, when their offense has struggled in the past, or they've struggled in the past, it's hard for them to get it going. The fact that they were down 14-0, and Devo brought this up, and he's right. I wasn't nervous as a fan. You watched them. Mm-hmm. Tua was calm. Tua was still joking. And then literally that third drive, you saw Tua go, okay, it's time. And it was like the Warriors, where they're like, all right, we're going to go now and just score 6 touchdowns on our next 7 drives. And they did. So, yes, and I get the Panthers are probably the worst team in football, but they've in the past played teams below their level and not look like that. So that's what seems different about this team is whether it's McDaniel and their confidence, the fact that they just, as a group, really seem to enjoy each other, and the bevy of talent is something they haven't had in years. They look like one of these teams, like the Chiefs we've seen do this. We've seen the Eagles do this. We saw the Niners do this a lot last year, where even when they get down, they never lose confidence in themselves, and then they show you why.
Yeah, I'm completely, people say it was just the Panthers, it was just the Giants. And yet, you see in the NFL, look what happened, as we just mentioned, the 49ers and the Eagles this past week. So it happens, and yet it's not just that the Dolphins are winning, it's the margin of winning. I remember talking to Pat Riley once about, he goes, I don't really worry if our team loses by 1 or 2 or 3. It's when you lose by 20 or 25. Then you know you got a problem. And the Dolphins, to take it to a different sport, are winning by 20 and 25. So that tells you, okay, they're beating on some bad teams. I get it. But they're not just beating them, they're beating them down badly. So, again, the next 2 or 3 weeks will sort of tell us where we are, and also, what they need to work on to be there, because they're not a finished product at all. And so if they lose, what you want them to be is competitive at Philadelphia. Okay, if they lose, it's still October. There's still a lot of runway for them to figure out some things before December and January.
They catch the Eagles at a very advantageous time, though. I don't know what the status is for this week. Not one that it's inclined to necessarily go right to the injury reports on Wednesday, but both of the corners for the Eagles were out. Their top 2 corners last week, which would not be a good omen, facing Waddle Hill and the contingent of Dolphin receivers with the timing they have going with Tua right now, and also Jalen Carter was injured, and he's been a beast for the Eagles on defense, who haven't looked nearly as sharp so far this year as they did pretty much at any time last year. So except maybe in the second half against the Chiefs, they've been more of that team than they have been this juggernaut that was ready to use last year as a springboard to a monster season. All right, we need to ask you about this and. I mean, it amazes me, Dave, because you've probably heard this a zillion times. You're interviewing a coach, you get that one-on-one, with Parcells, or something, and he tells you, you know what, we sleep at the office here. We're here 24 hours a day. We have 100 meetings a week. And then you're asking yourself, how could you possibly then be so dumb as to hand a game like Mario Cristobal did?
I know where this is going. I know right where this is going.
We never got to talk to you.
I mean, all day long, you're at the office going over situations and, circumstances and possibilities. And, you know what? My eyes are bleeding from watching film. How do you not know to take a knee in that spot, number one, after it's happened to you before? And usually, you make a mistake like that. It's so late in the game. And the game's so, definitively decided that you can't lose, even though you did something really dumb. But in this case, they lose. And then, we saw something similar with Brian Daboll around halftime. It didn't appear that this was his decision, but if it wasn't, who bears responsibility? Where, he runs the ball and gets stuffed with 12 seconds to go before the half in a tight ball game, which he's winning against the Buffalo Bills on the road after, they're having a disastrous season, the Giants. And the one thing you can't have happen, everybody's screaming, don't get sacked. You can't get stopped short of the goal line with no timeouts. And you're asking yourself, how do coaches spend all of this time at the office and, they leave their wives and everything, and they can't come up with a better decision than that. And where does that leave you with Cristobal?
I think they obviously need to spend more time in the office, not less.
What the hell? I mean, how much time can you think about this shit?
Bring in the dresser and maybe the bed and sleep there. There's no explaining. And I wish there was. The football is where we need translations many times. Okay, what was the offense trying to do? What was the play call? What was the decision? What was the coverage? What do you see? And you just need translation on so many things to try to explain what's going on. And yes, this was a play you need no translation.
Nothing.
Anybody
Yeah.
who's watched one game would say, "What the heck is Mario
The
Cristobal
vendors
doing
are
there?"
screaming, "Take a knee!" I mean, that guy with the elephant hat. I think he checked out. The guy that's always selling beer at
Yeah,
Hard Rock Stadium.
that's the kind of game that will stick with him through his time here. Whenever he loses, whenever there's a 50-50 decision, you're going to, well, he's the coach who did that. So, that's going to be one he's going to have a hard time living down for a while.
I mean, you could have been at like St. Coleman's Church, and I'm sure the pastor would have said, and now if everybody would please take a knee in honor of Mario Cristobal, we can honor the Lord in all of his glory. I mean, that's just a tragic mistake. And many people thought, Dave, that this would, kind of ignite some kind of turnaround, though. And that the Canes would be able to go on the road and play a really good ball game against North Carolina. It wasn't like they were, destroyed in this game, but in the end game, they ended up losing by double digits. So, I mean, is that? I mean, could you see that as something that the team would rally around, or I'm looking at it as that's a devastating blow when your coach costs you your undefeated season.
Yeah, let's just look at it. I don't know emotionally. You can argue either way. They're going to be destroyed now, or they love their coaches. They're going to be, but look at what it did to their season. Instead of winning one in the ACC,
it's over, Johnny. Yeah, it's over.
now they're 0-2 at North Carolina. They play Clemson this weekend, and so they're looking at 0-3 possibly, or 1-2 when they could be 2-1, or they'd still be in the conference race, and so the unfortunate thing is they have a lot more talent this year. You can see they're a better team. You look at their numbers, you look at the things that they're doing, the way they're moving the ball. They have an offensive system this year that works with Tyler Van Dyke, and yet it's these mistakes. They're glaring mistakes, turnovers. Penalties, not kneeling, things that are more fundamental than better talent and better systems that just seem easier to take care of, that they're not doing well this year.
I remember, thinking this. I guess, there is a little fog with the memory, but I want to say it was his opening game as a head coach of the Canes. Butch Davis was taking on UCLA, I think. And I remember looking, and it was like helter-skelter on the sidelines. It seemed like, and that was a knock on Butch, that maybe he wasn't the greatest game day coach, tremendous recruiter, and he was following in the footsteps of guys that had terrific success there at the University of Miami. But you see that same sort of level of confusion on the Cristobal sideline, don't you? I mean, it's easy to say when a guy's, made obvious blunders like that, but it just doesn't seem like that there's an overwhelming amount of confidence that everybody's on the same page on that Hurricane sideline. Is that something that you've kind of looked at, or am I just making that up?
No, I look, he came with that reputation. Great recruiter, not great sideline coach. And Butch had that same idea. And yet, if he can do what Butch did here, he'll be in great shape. Okay.
Yeah.
Butch
no doubt.
recruited and developed, 5 number one picks for like 3 straight years. And he handed off a national contender to Larry Coker, who won a title. So, look, Butch, if he's at the level of Butch by the time he leaves here, he'll have turned around the program and made it a national contender again. And games like this one against Georgia Tech will be, remember that? Yeah. Oh God, that was awful. Wasn't it? But isn't it fun at the top again? So, I think there's a valid comparison there. As far as recruiting, because he brings in recruits. So we'll see how they develop the recruits. You look at Butch's staff. Butch had like 3 or 4 guys who went on to be NFL coaches on his staff. And he had like Jimmy, he had a great staff.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, a couple of quick previews here, if you don't mind, Dave Hyde, because the season is underway for the NHL. We saw the Panthers lose their first couple. I guess they got a win the other night. to move to 1-2. Expectations going into the season, you would think, would be high. You didn't hear that much about change during the offseason. I guess they lost a couple of guys that were critical to their success last year and came in with injuries. And Luby's optimistic. He says, you know what? Damn be damned. The Miami Heat are going to be just fine. In fact, they're even going to be better than they were last year. What are your thoughts, Dave Hyde?
On the Panthers?
Panthers and the Heat. Just a quick observation.
Both of them, I mean, look, the Panthers, I was out there last week. I'm going out there this morning before the opener tomorrow night, home opener tomorrow night. And I was surprised they have like a big turnover on the roster, on the lower end of the roster. But they're bigger. Look, Bobrovsky plays like he did in the playoffs and really since January and with a brief section where he got hurt. But if he plays like that, then no one's sitting here talking about his contract and everybody's saying, okay, he's one of the top goalies in the league. Then, Barkov and Kachuk and the top end talent is there. The question is, starting with health, probably their two top defensemen are out in Ekblad and Montour till December from injuries in the Stanley Cup run. And so,
how is Kachuk
a lot of games until then.
He should be in traction, Kachuk, should he not?
Yeah. Oh, the way they said, it was just a broken bone at heel.
You expect to see him as a spokesman for Morgan and Morgan or something.
Exactly.
They had like 4 or 5 guys playing with broken bones by the end of the Stanley Cup run. It's just
amazing, man. They didn't have a single bone that was intact.
Crazy sport.
Yeah, I think even Paul Maurice had like some ribs that were sore.
I hate to talk about my sore knee or anything out there.
No, I mean, it's not for the faint of heart, that game. I was looking at this 18-year-old Connor Bedard who seems very polished and, ready for the occasion. Very low-key, humble kid, and saying all the right things. But you're thinking, wow, I mean, he's going in there against, some grizzled old 35-year-old Radko Gudas type who just wants to take his head off.
and he stood next to me. I was in Vegas in the press box. There was a NHL radio right beside me, and he was waiting to go on. He looks 18. He looks like he hasn't hit his growth spurt yet. You're like, wow.
You're waiting for Cubby and the rest of the Mouseketeers to come out. I mean, it's unbelievable. Wow.
Yeah, and the Heat, Defo, the Heat are going to be the Heat. They'll be better in April than they are in October, as always under Eric Spoelstra. The question is, they got hit by a double blow there with the Lillard trade. Lillard going to Milwaukee and Drew Holiday going to the Celtics. They're two top rivals in the East. And
just what you need, yes.
Yeah.
Is everybody on to fuck Pat Riley? Is that the way this works, Dave Hyde? I mean, I don't know. You don't probably want to use that terminology.
He's not going to use
that term. Yeah. You're still writing. I mean, when are they going to open up the language barriers in the paper? Wouldn't it be nice if you could just throw a few expletives in your column?
Aren't there better words than that?
See, he's a wordsmith.
Or not? He doesn't need that. We're allowed to use the 7 scatological words on radio now. That's beautiful.
I mean, I grew up with it. It was hard to edit it out of my head all of those years. I mean, it really was. You would find yourself on the verge of saying, "Oh, Frank, Frank Mahavlich. He's a great player." Many times I came close, but no, I mean,
George Carlin.
How does that happen? Is that just fate? I mean,
anymore. Yeah.
Is there some conspiracy there in the league? I mean, look, they I mean, you're looking at Portland, and they double stuck it to Pat Riley.
Yes,
this Joe Cronin. What the hell happened here?
Looked like it. Like it. Sure played out that way, didn't it?
It's like, hey, let me find a place for Drew Holiday where he can go to a good team and make it even better. And they throw him to the Celtics. Are you kidding me? That seemed like it might have had some Riley involved. Or Riley hatred involved there. But anyway, you're right. I mean, so these teams get better. Where does that leave us with the Heat real quickly? And then we'll let you, get about the business of, continuing to drum up some Messi mania or something, which we haven't really talked about. But yeah, well, what do you think? I mean, are they going to be? I mean, we probably should just wait and see how Spoelstra molds these guys into a playoff contender again, where they're peaking at the right time.
Well, that, and you see, can they unload Kyle Lowry's contract?
Yeah,
expiring big contract that some team would want, and for somebody who will help them. And who would that be? And so that's one of the questions of the season. And in some level, they're sort of wherever they were last year, where nobody thought they could win. Nobody thought, and they had this big, surprising, magical run through to the NBA Finals, just like the Panthers, just like everybody did down here this last year. And so
it was great. Yeah,
you sit here in October and you just don't see it happening, and yet with the Heat, not to put a ceiling on, to maybe a soft ceiling on everything.
Luby, despising what transpired during the offseason or didn't transpire, naturally has stated that the Heat will be better than ever this year. That this will remind people of the 50-win season when they had Anthony Mason as their main scoring threat, and not much else.
I think got swept in the first one.
Yeah, it should be fun. All right, where are you off to, Dave? I mean, I haven't heard much about Messi. I mean, is it over for Inter Miami CF and Messi mania? Has that run its course already?
You do know, to update you, Messi scored 2 goals last night.
That's what
he did. Where? What team is he playing for?
Wasn't he done?
For Argentina. We're on the international break right now. I think they have.
Oh, really? When does the season start and end? Has anybody figured that out? We've been trying to figure that out since the acquisition.
It ends. I think they have 1 game left, don't they?
Who would know? I mean, who would know? Only Jim Sarney would know what the schedule is.
You're sitting on the biggest soccer story in the world, and you're feigning ignorance.
No, I'm not feigning ignorance. I'm totally ignorant. I can't figure out, Dave, when does the MLS season begin and when does it end? And what constitutes the MLS season? Because there are like 6 other seasons inside of it. When have you seen a sport run like this? My sugar now.
That's how soccer is. Catch up to the world, Defo. I know it's difficult, but if I can get there, you can get there. I have faith in you. I have faith that you can figure it all out. I couldn't do Euclidean algebra, and I never passed it in high school, but I can figure out the soccer.
Isn't that incredible? Yeah. Well, we were very good at math because of the gambling. That was odds and probability was the only course I aced at Syracuse University, and I had that. I ended up being like almost asked to teach the course. It was the degenerate math is always good. But all right, well, it sounds good. I mean, I'm looking forward to a lot of different things, as I'm sure you are. And, we'll see. We have the college basketball cranking up. 2 teams that did well last year with FAU and Miami, 10th and 13th in some of the preseason polls. And then it's only a matter of how many years before Rick Pitino wins it all at St. John's. What do you think? 2 years, Dave Hyde?
Well, the question is, does he win it all or does he get kicked out of there on some scandal, right? I mean, that's sort of the idea.
There are no violations anymore, though. You could do whatever you want in recruiting, I would think. I mean, it wouldn't be surprising if he ended up getting a couple of members of the Knicks to play for St. John's with some eligibility that they had.
Maybe Anthony Mason has eligibility left, and he could come back.
All of a sudden, he's got Randall out there, shooting jumpers. All right. Thanks so much, Dave Hyde. Always a pleasure, my friend. You've been very generous with your time, as always. Really enjoyed it. All right. Thanks a lot. Dave Hyde, ladies and gentlemen.
Always a good time talking about only Dave Hyde, if not the longest, nearly the longest tenured writer in all of South Florida, covers all of our major sports as well as anyone, not only locally, but nationally. We enjoy talking to him, and he's been a big fan of good things. Like Defo and I have always joked about negativity sells on radio. Yeah, it sells like in the middle of a good year. It doesn't sell for 20 years straight. Dave Hyde opened our eyes to that, and it's nice to see the success of the South Florida sports team. Heat, Panthers finals, FAU, UM basketball teams in the Final Four. The Dolphins are one of the best teams in all of the NFL, and they made the playoffs last year, and they almost took out the Bills with their third-string quarterback in Skylar Thompson. The Marlins did make the playoffs. Sadly, the Marlins are the Marlins, and even when things look good, they don't give confidence to Kim Ng. They don't put their confidence in Kim Ng. They piss her off, and she leaves. So now there's a vacancy in the GM spot after she could be the executive of the year in baseball. But bright things right now in the South Florida sports scene, and we enjoy talking to Dave Hyde about that. We will talk to you each and every morning if you check us out. 8 to 10 now, 8 to like 9:30ish on South Florida Live, both YouTube and Facebook. Check us out with our national podcast, the Believe Network, BLEAV.com. Search After Hours, a lot of fun off the sports beaten path, and then some sports conversations there as well. After Hours on the Believe Network. Check us out every day. We do short synopsis, national, local, on No Filter, nofilter.net, the morning briefing. And here, with our South Florida skewed content and opinions, the Devo Show with the Luby on the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
Hey, folks, Tony Segreto here. Let me ask you a question. What do you look for when you go out to eat? Good food, obviously, friendly atmosphere, not too loud, but good energy, reasonable prices, and a place where you feel comfortable. All those ingredients, no pun meant there, are hard to find unless you're talking about the Texas Roadhouse. You see, they encompass all of those attributes. Really, really good food, amazing atmosphere, good for a family, good for a date, or just a night out for yourself, and prices that will make you extremely happy. Their ribs unmatched, steaks hand-cut every day. Everything, and I mean everything, is made on site, including their incredible bread. It's the one day, folks, that you can forget about low-carb diets. Trust me when I tell you, Texas Roadhouse, your restaurant, your destination when you say, where should we go and eat tonight?
These days, we're all looking for comfort anywhere we can find it. Thank goodness for Landlubbers Raw Bar and Grill in Plantation, because they are making sure you are as comfortable as possible. First of all, they're not only open for delivery and pickup. All you have to do is go to landlubbersbarandgrill.com for both pickup and free delivery. You're going to have the best wings in the world. You're going to have a great burger. You're going to have their amazing soups. Again, Landlubbers, Raw Bar and Grill. It's nice and easy. Just go to landlubbersbarandgrill.com for both your pickup and free delivery. Thank goodness for Landlubbers for making you always feel right at home.